Sometimes the hardest part of dementia isn't the disease, it's the family conversation around it. You're exhausted, you're scared, you think it may be time for more care, and someone else in the family says, no, it's too soon. You're overreacting, we promised we'd never. If you're carrying this alone in your family, this video is for you. Today I'm going to walk you through how to have this conversation in a way that protects your sanity and reduces unnecessary family conflict. Hi, for those of you who are new here, my name is Dr. Sinclair. I'm a neuropsychologist, dementia care specialist, and founder of the Confident Caregiver Academy. Let's jump on in. Why conflicts arise around care. Family conflict around memory care often happens because people misunderstand two neurological realities. First, dementia doesn't just solely affect memory, it impacts multiple systems that change how a person functions day to day. So families don't always appreciate the scope of issues caregivers are experiencing. For example, the orbitofrontal cortex, which helps regulate social judgment and impulse control, can weaken, leading to very poor decision making and very inappropriate behavior. The parietal lobes, which help us understand space and navigation, can be affected, increasing the risk of wandering or getting lost in familiar places. The thalamus, which filters sensory input, that can become less efficient, making environments feel overwhelming or disorienting and causing your loved one to refuse care. So what one family member sees as still doing okay might look very, very different to the person managing daily spatial confusion, apathy, refusals, and safety risks. Second, and just as important, chronic caregiving activates the care partner's own stress systems. Long-term stress engages the body's survival circuitry, the stress hormones, the hyper-alert state, the sleep disruption. If one sibling sees occasional confusion at dinner and the other lives with daily wandering, nighttime agitation, and unpredictable behavior, they are not witnessing the same neurological load. This isn't about who loves more, it's about who is carrying which version of the disease and whose nervous system and body is absorbing it daily. Think of this conversation like adjusting the thermostat in a house. Some people are standing near a window and feel a breeze. Others are in a room where the heater is overheating. Until everyone acknowledges the different experiences of where they're standing, the temperature argument goes nowhere. The argument isn't about truth because everyone has their own truth. It's about perspective. Can you see or try to see the other's point of view? That both are having different experiences and both experiences are valid. For the family member who's refusing the move, sometimes what's underneath that resistance isn't solely logistics. It's fear. It's grief. It's the unspoken thought, if we move them, does that mean that we're getting closer to the end? They may never say it out loud, but in my years working in this field, I've seen it over and over again. Some siblings are terrified that a higher level of care makes the decline feel real, and sometimes distance protects that denial. Not seeing the day-to-day changes, not witnessing the subtle losses, not feeling the exhaustion in their bones, distance can make it easier to believe things are more stable than they are. But for the care partner doing the daily heavy lift, this slow goodbye hasn't been theoretical. It's been your reality for a long time. You've been adjusting, compensating, carrying, and grieving quietly in small moments almost every day. And that difference in lived experience, in perspective, that's often where the tension comes from. So what can be done? Start the conversation with capacity, not accusation. One of the fastest ways these conversations escalate is when they begin with blame. You don't see what I deal with, you're never here, etc. Even if those statements are true, they activate defensiveness in the other person. Instead, anchor the conversation in capacity. I'm noticing I can't safely manage this alone anymore. I'm worried about safety and sustainability. She's been wandering at night and we're both not sleeping. When the focus is on capacity, not character flaws, people are less likely to dig in. So in summary, first, avoid framing as you're not helping enough. And second, shift to what is sustainable. Third, focus on safety and capacity. Second point, Speak in patterns, not emotional snapshots. Families often argue because one person describes a crisis and others think it's a one-off. Instead of sharing isolated stories, describe patterns. In the last 3 months, there have been 5 wandering incidents with mom. Nighttime confusion is now happening 4 nights a week with dad. Patterns reduce debate. They make the conversation less about emotion and more about observable change. In summary, use recurring examples. Highlight progression. Remove exaggeration from your tone. Just speak the facts in patterns. Quick pause, care partners. If you're trying to think through whether it's time or how to approach this conversation and finding value in today's video, please like and subscribe. That small action tells YouTube to send this to other care partners who may be struggling just like you. Thank you. Now let's move on to our third point. Name the emotional undercurrent. Often resistance isn't solely about disagreement, it's about guilt. Family members may be thinking, are we abandoning them? What will people think? We said we'd never do this. We said we'd always keep them home. You can gently name this, care partner. You can say something like, I think we're all scared of feeling like we're giving up, and then stop. Let that sit with them for a while and see how they respond. When you name the fear, you reduce its power. In summary, name the fear of guilt, fear of judgment, fear of breaking a promise. Name the fears in the conversation and allow it to stay with them and see what comes up. Fourth point, separate love from location. This is the most important reframing. Moving to memory care or assisted living is not withdrawing love. It's reallocating responsibility. Sometimes when professionals handle the physical and safety needs, families get to return to just being daughters, sons, spouses, instead of the exhausted managers. That shift can actually restore connection. So remember, in summary, love is not measured by proximity. Second, it's important to remember that safety and dignity are priorities as well, and higher level of care communities can increase quality of interactions. Fifth, protect yourself from the hero narrative. In many families, one person becomes the hero, and I know you guys know it. They take on more, they compensate longer, they sacrifice quietly. But unsustainable caregiving doesn't prove devotion. It accelerates burnout. If you're the primary care partner, your health and stability matter in this decision. In summary, one family member often absorbs the burden. Keep that in mind. Martyrdom increases burnout, and sustainability is not selfish. It is a form of self-care. Here's a bit of mindset reframe, care partners. This isn't about convincing everyone. It's about grounding yourself in clarity. You can't control how quickly others accept your reality, but you can control how clearly you communicate the capacity limits. I hope today's video was helpful for you, care partner. I know how hard this conversation is to have with family. If you want guidance on how to explain dementia to your family or how to navigate these decisions together, the Confident Caregiver Academy can help. You'll find the Work With Me button linked below to learn more and to schedule a call. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.